The first thing my husband said when he saw me walking toward our house was, "You're supposed to be dead." He did not whisper it.
He screamed it across the white stone courtyard while 40 guests turned to stare at me. Behind him, music played beside the pool. Champagne glasses glittered in the Florida sun. A silver banner hung above the terrace. Con Atolatians Daniel and Fialair. Claire was my younger sister. Daniel was still legally my husband. And the mansion behind them belonged to me. I stopped at the edge of the courtyard in my white navy dress uniform. 3 military investigators and 2 armed security officers stood a few steps behind me. The guests could not see the federal agents waiting at the front gate. Not yet. Daniel pointed at me with a shaking hand. This is some kind of trick. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, Daniel, I said. The trick is over. His face lost all its color. To understand why my husband thought I was dead and why my own sister was celebrating in my house, I need to take you back 11 months. My name is Commander Evelyn Ross. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had served in the United States Navy for 17 years. My job was logistics. I moved people, medicine, equipment, and supplies through places where one mistake could cost lives. I was good at finding details other people missed. That skill saved me overseas. It also destroyed my family. Before my final deployment, my grandmother, Margaret Ross, died at 89. She left me her coastal estate near St. Augustine. It was a beautiful white house with tall columns, wide balconies, and a view of the Atlantic. But it was more than a house. My grandfather had been a Navy medic. My grandmother's will required me to use part of the property as a recovery center for wounded service members. I had promised her I would call it Harbor House. Daniel claimed he loved the idea. We had been married for 6 years. He was charming, handsome, and always ready with the right words. He owned a small construction company that was usually 1 bad month away from failure. I had rescued it twice with my savings. That should have warned me. Instead, I told myself marriage meant helping each other. 2 weeks before I deployed, I gave Daniel limited power of attorney. It allowed him to pay household bills, manage repairs, and sign routine documents while I was away. My attorney, Harold Quinn, prepared it. This is narrow authority, Harold told us. It does not allow the sale or transfer of the estate. Daniel squeezed my hand and laughed. I'm her husband, not a pirate. I remember laughing too. My sister Claire attended the meeting. She had recently moved into our guest house after losing her job. She hugged me before I left and promised to watch over Daniel. She kept that promise in a way I never imagined. My deployment was supposed to last 8 months. For the first 3 months, Daniel called every Sunday. He sent pictures of new paint, repaired windows, and workers clearing the overgrown eastern lawn. Then the calls became shorter. Then they stopped. He blamed poor connections. Claire wrote that Daniel was exhausted from managing the renovation. Harold assured me that the estate paperwork was in order. 3 people. 3 lies. In my 5th month overseas, our convoy was hit during a nighttime transfer. I will not describe everything that happened. Some memories do not become easier when spoken aloud. I remember a violent flash. I remember the vehicle rolling. I remember waking beneath twisted metal while fuel ran across the road. 2 people died that night. I suffered a head injury, broken ribs, and damage to my left shoulder. My identification pouch burned in the wreckage, and the first casualty report listed me as missing, presumed dead. The report was corrected 9 days later. But during those 9 days, somebody in Florida moved very quickly. I spent weeks recovering at a military hospital in Germany. Because of security concerns involving the convoy, our unit's communications were restricted. I could send only a short notice through official channels. Daniel should have received confirmation that I was alive. He later claimed he never did. At the hospital, I borrowed a nurse's phone and called him. A recording said his number was no longer in service. I called Claire. Same result. Then I emailed Harold. The message bounced back. That was when fear entered my heart. Not fear that something had happened to them. Fear that something had happened because of them. I asked a friend in Jacksonville to drive past the estate. 2 days later, she sent me a picture that made my hands turn cold. My grandmother's brass nameplate was gone from the gate. In its place was a polished black sign. ATCCs. P. Sac Pirvat, Lux UR Isidenci. I zoomed in until the image became blurry. At the bottom of the sign was the name of the management company. Quinn Coastal Holdings. My attorney's last name. I did not call Daniel again. I did not warn Claire. And I did not tell Harold that I knew. Instead, I did what the Navy had trained me to do. I began an investigation. Part TOO. THE GOAT H's records of the doctors wanted me to rest. I pretended I did. At night. While the hospital grew quiet, I opened public property records on a borrowed tablet. According to the county database, I no longer owned my grandmother's estate. I had supposedly transferred it to Quinn Coastal Holdings, 6 days after the convoy attack. 6 days after I had been declared missing. The document carried my electronic signature and a notarized statement claiming I had approved the transfer before deployment. The notary was Claire. My sister was not a notary. At least, she had not been one when I left. I kept searching. Quinn Coastal Holdings had been created only 3 months earlier. Daniel owned 40%. Claire owned 20%. Harold controlled the remaining 40% through a second company. They had not simply stolen my home. They had planned to steal it before I was injured. The next discovery hurt even more. My life insurance policy had been changed. Daniel was still the primary beneficiary. But Claire had been added as a secondary beneficiary. A claim for $2 million had been filed 3 days after the first casualty report. The claim included a death certificate. My death certificate. I stared at the screen for a long time. It listed the wrong middle name, but the correct social security number. The medical examiner's signature looked real. The county seal looked real. Someone had built a death around me while I was still breathing. I contacted Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen, an investigator I trusted. I told her I believed my personal data had been taken from restricted military records. Maya did not tell me I was imagining things. She asked for evidence. I sent everything. 2 days later, she came to my hospital room with a laptop and a serious expression. "Your husband received the corrected casualty notice," she said. My throat tightened. "You're certain?" "He signed for it electronically. So did your attorney." She showed me the confirmation. Daniel had learned I was alive before filing the insurance claim. He had continued anyway. Maya also found that someone had entered the military family portal using Daniel's authorized spouse account. The user downloaded my service records, insurance documents, emergency contacts, and a scanned copy of my signature. The access came from my house in Florida. "This is bigger than a property dispute," Maya said. "It may involve insurance fraud, identity theft, falsified federal records, and conspiracy. Can you arrest them?" "Not yet. We need to know everyone involved." That answer made me angry, but she was right. If we moved too soon, Harold could blame Daniel. Daniel could blame Claire. Claire could claim she had been manipulated. They would divide the crime until no one owned it. So I became a ghost. The Navy corrected my official status, but at my request, details about my recovery remained private. Maya arranged for my transfer to a rehabilitation center under additional security. Outside a small circle, nobody knew when I would return to the United States. Meanwhile, Daniel built a new life on top of my supposed grave. He told friends that grief had brought him and Claire together. He said they had spent sleepless nights comforting one another after my death. Within 4 months, they were living as a couple. Within 6 months, Claire wore my grandmother's diamond ring. Daniel posted pictures from the estate. He stood beside the pool with drinks in his hand. He hosted investors on the terrace. He called the house a boutique retreat for select private clients. Harbor House had disappeared from every plan. My grandmother's dream was being turned into a resort for rich strangers. But their greed had created a weakness. To renovate the estate, Daniel needed money. Harold arranged a private loan, using the property as security. Their lender was a company named Atlantic Meridian Partners. Maya traced it to a businessman named Victor Hale. Victor had been investigated twice for financial crimes, but never charged. He specialized in lending money to desperate people, then taking their property when they failed. Daniel had borrowed $3 million from him. The payment was due in 90 days. If Daniel could not pay, Victor would own the estate. I realized the theft had entered a second stage. Daniel and Harold planned to sell membership shares in their luxury retreat, collect millions, pay Victor, and keep control. They had already taken deposits from 12 investors. Now there were more victims. Maya wanted an undercover financial agent to approach Harold. The plan was safe and professional. But I had another idea. Before my grandmother died, she created a charitable trust for Harbor House. The trust still held a separate investment account that Daniel did not know about. I was the director, but the public filing named only the bank that administered it. Through that trust, we created a legal investment company called Sentinel Recovery Group. Sentinel offered Daniel exactly what he needed: enough money to pay Victor Hale and finish the resort. There was one condition. Every owner had to attend the closing and personally certify that the estate's title was valid. Daniel accepted in less than an hour. He was so eager to steal more money that he agreed to prove our case for us. Tae part, way tmy hose. I returned to Florida on a rainy Tuesday under the name Elizabeth Reed. My hair was darker. I wore glasses and used a cane because my left leg still weakened when I was tired. I stayed in a small rental apartment 20 miles from the estate. For 3 weeks, I watched. Daniel left home every morning at 9. Claire drove my grandmother's blue Mercedes to yoga classes, salons, and expensive lunches. Harold visited most evenings, usually carrying documents. They looked comfortable. Criminals often do after enough time passes. They mistake silence for safety. One Thursday, I followed Claire to a cafe. She sat outside with a woman I recognized as her college friend, Nicole. I took a table nearby and kept my back to them. Claire spoke loudly. "Daniel wants the wedding in October," she said. "But Harold says we should wait until the insurance money clears." Nicole lowered her voice. "Doesn't it bother you?" "What?" "Living in Evelyn's house. Being with her husband." There was a pause. Then Claire laughed. Evelyn spent her whole life making everyone feel small. She got the career, the medals, Grandma's house. Everything. For once, I got something. I gripped my coffee cup until pain shot through my injured shoulder. I had paid Claire's rent for 2 years. I had found her 3 jobs. When she crashed her car, I bought her another one. And all that time, she had not seen love. She had seen proof that I believed I was better than her. Nicole asked, "But what if the military made a mistake? What if she comes back?" Claire's answer was quiet. "I almost missed it. Then Harold has a plan." That changed everything. Fraud was one crime. Preparing for my return suggested another. Maya placed recording equipment in my apartment and arranged protection. Then our undercover agent, Marcus Bell, began meeting Harold as Sentinel's financial representative. During the first meeting, Harold provided copies of the false deed and death certificate. During the second, he guaranteed that no heir could challenge the title. During the third, Marcus asked what would happen if I were found alive. Harold smiled. "Commander Ross died overseas," he said. "If a confused or injured woman appears, we have medical documentation showing that she suffered severe head trauma. Her husband can request emergency guardianship." My stomach turned. The plan was not to kill me. It was worse in a different way. They intended to call me mentally incompetent. Daniel would become my guardian. He would control my medical care, my money, and my testimony. Any accusation I made would be blamed on brain damage. Harold had already prepared the petition. It included a statement from a neurologist named Dr. Simon Wade, who claimed he had reviewed my records and believed I suffered from delusions. Dr. Wade had never examined me. But Maya discovered that Daniel's construction company had renovated Wade's private clinic for free. The circle was complete. My husband had stolen my house. My sister had certified the lie. My attorney had designed it. A doctor was prepared to erase my credibility, and a dangerous lender waited to take whatever remained. We needed each of them to act in front of witnesses. Sentinel scheduled the investment closing for August 19th. Daniel decided to combine it with an engagement celebration. He invited investors, neighbors, county officials, and local reporters. He wanted everyone to see his success. I wanted everyone to see the truth. 2 days before the party, something unexpected happened. An envelope appeared beneath my apartment door. Inside was a photograph of me entering the building. On the back, someone had written Gyewo, SK2REV. Maya moved me to a secure hotel. Investigators reviewed the building cameras. A man wearing a baseball cap had followed me from the rehabilitation clinic. We could not identify his face. That night, Daniel called my private number. Only a few people had it. I answered but did not speak. For several seconds, I heard only breathing. Then Daniel said, "Evie." My old nickname sounded obscene in his voice. "I know you're there," he continued. "You don't understand what happened. Call me before you do something you'll regret." I stayed silent. His voice changed. The softness vanished. "If you come to the house, people will see a sick woman in uniform. Harold has everything ready. You will lose, and this time nobody will believe you." He ended the call. I sat on the hotel bed, shaking. Not because I believed him. Because some part of me still remembered the man I had loved. The man who made pancakes on Sunday mornings. The man who held my grandmother's hand in the hospital. The man who once drove 6 hours because I had called and said I was lonely. I wanted to understand when that man had disappeared. Then I realized the harder truth. Maybe he had never disappeared. Maybe he had never existed. The next morning, I told Maya the plan would continue. But I changed one detail. I would not wait in a surveillance van. I would attend the closing myself. FUR. TAT deed. Rit R&D August 19th arrived bright and hot. I put on my white dress uniform slowly. My shoulder still hurt when I lifted my arm. But I fastened every button. I pinned each ribbon in its proper place. I did not wear the uniform to impress anyone. I wore it because Daniel planned to call me confused, weak, and broken. I wanted the truth to enter the house before I spoke a word. At 2 in the afternoon, Marcus Bell arrived at the estate with 2 agents posing as Sentinel attorneys. Hidden microphones were already operating inside the library. Daniel, Claire, Harold, and Dr. Wade signed the closing documents one at a time. Each certified that I was dead. Each certified that the deed was authentic. Each certified that there were no legal claims against the property. Marcus asked Daniel one final question. If Commander Ross were alive, would she have any ownership interest? Daniel looked directly at the camera hidden inside a bookshelf. Commander Ross is dead, he said. Any woman claiming otherwise would be an imposter or mentally unstable. That was our signal. The security team opened the gate. I walked up the long path with Maya and the others behind me. The party had begun outside. Guests stood beneath white umbrellas. A string quartet played near the pool. Reporters photographed Daniel beside a model of the planned resort. Then he saw me. "You're supposed to be dead!" His shout cut through the music. Claire dropped her glass. Harold stepped backward toward the house. Dr. Wade stared at my uniform and whispered something I could not hear. I stopped 10 feet from Daniel. "No," I said. "You only needed me to be." The guests became completely silent. Daniel recovered faster than I expected. His face changed from shock to concern, as though he were an actor stepping into a familiar role. "Evelyn," he said gently. "You're hurt. You need help." He moved toward me with open arms. I raised one hand. "Do not touch me." The Claire began crying. "We thought you were gone." "You received confirmation that I was alive." "No, we didn't." Maya held up a folder. "We have the electronic receipts." Harold turned and hurried through the terrace doors. 2 federal agents met him inside. The reporters lifted their cameras. Daniel looked around and realized the audience he had invited was now watching his collapse. He tried another strategy. "This is a private family medical emergency," he announced. "My wife suffered a serious brain injury." Dr. Wade can confirm. Dr. Wade interrupted him. "I want an attorney." That was the moment Daniel understood he was alone. Claire pointed at Harold. "He planned everything. He told us Evelyn had died. He said the corrected notice was probably an error." I looked at her. "Did he force you to become a notary?" She said nothing. "Did he force you to forge my signature?" Her tears stopped. "Did he force you to wear Grandma's ring?" Claire covered the diamond with her other hand. Daniel stepped between us. "Enough." "You're right," I said. "It is enough." Maya nodded to Marcus. He removed the ceremonial investment documents from his briefcase. "Sentinel Recovery Group will not be transferring funds," he said. The closing was conducted as part of a joint fraud investigation. Daniel lunged for the papers. An agent caught his arm and turned him around. The party erupted. Guests shouted. Investors demanded answers. Claire tried to run toward the beach, but 2 officers stopped her at the stairs. Harold was led out through the house in handcuffs. Then a black sport utility vehicle crashed through the open gate. Everyone froze. Victor Hale climbed out with 2 men. He had learned that the Sentinel money was not coming. If the fraud case froze the property, his $3 million loan would become worthless. Victor pulled a pistol. People screamed and dropped behind tables. He pointed the gun at Daniel. "You promised me clean title," Victor said. Daniel raised his hands. "I can fix this." Victor laughed. "Your dead wife is wearing a uniform. Federal agents are standing in the yard, and you think you can fix it." Everything happened quickly after that. One of Victor's men reached inside his jacket. An agent shouted. Guests ran toward the house. Daniel grabbed Claire and pulled her in front of him as a shield. That single movement told me everything I would ever need to know about my husband. He did not protect the woman he claimed to love. He used her. I moved behind a stone column as the security officers surrounded Victor. Maya spoke calmly, ordering him to lower the weapon. For one terrible second, I thought he would fire. Then Dr. Wade, who had been crawling behind the bar, knocked over a tray of champagne bottles. The crash startled Victor. He turned his head. An agent rushed him. The pistol struck the ground. Within seconds, Victor and his men were in custody. No shots were fired. No one was seriously injured. Daniel was still holding Claire in front of him when an officer pulled them apart. She looked back at him with horror. For the first time, my sister saw what I had seen too late. Daniel loved only himself. As officers placed him in handcuffs, he stared at me. "Evelyn, please," he said. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding." I walked closer. "You told the world I was dead," I said. "Now you can explain why to a jury. Par 5. I'll het you just IEFTBHIND. The arrests were only the beginning. Real justice is slower than revenge stories make it seem. It takes paperwork, hearings, delays, and long nights when you wonder whether the truth will survive people paid to confuse it. But this time, the evidence was stronger than their lies. Daniel had received the corrected casualty notice and accessed my military records. His computer contained drafts of the false deed. His messages showed that he had promised Claire a share of the estate months before my deployment. Harold had created Quinn Coastal Holdings, prepared the forged documents, bribed a clerk to process the false death certificate, and arranged the fraudulent loan. Dr. Wade had signed a medical opinion without examining me. Claire had completed an online notary course after my deployment, then falsely notarized my signature. Investigators also found messages in which she asked Daniel whether they should wait until Evelyn's status becomes permanent. Victor Hale's arrest opened a separate investigation into illegal lending, threats, and money laundering. One by one, they began blaming each other. Harold claimed Daniel was the leader. Daniel claimed Harold had manipulated him. Claire claimed she had acted out of grief. Dr. Wade claimed he misunderstood the records. Victor claimed the pistol was for personal protection. The jury believed none of them. The hardest day of the trial came when prosecutors played the recording of Daniel's call to my hotel. The courtroom heard him use my old nickname, offer false concern, and then threaten to have me declared incompetent. He sat only a few yards away from me, while his own voice filled the room. For a moment, he looked like the man I had married. His shoulders dropped. His eyes found mine. I almost expected an apology. Instead, he leaned toward his lawyer and complained that the recording had been taken out of context. That was when the final piece of grief left me. I understood that there would never be a confession big enough to explain what he had done. Some people do not face the truth when it corners them. They simply search for a smaller lie. When I testified, Daniel's attorney asked whether my injury had affected my memory. "Yes," I answered. He smiled as if I had opened a door for him. Then I continued. "I sometimes forget where I leave my keys. I have never forgotten who forged my name, stole my home, and filed a claim on my life." Several jurors looked directly at Daniel. His attorney did not ask that question again. Daniel was convicted of conspiracy, identity theft, insurance fraud, wire fraud, and attempted theft of military benefits. Harold received the longest sentence because he had organized the legal structure and bribed a public employee. Dr. Wade lost his license and served time for fraud and conspiracy. Victor's case continued in federal court, where other victims finally came forward. Claire accepted a plea agreement. She received a shorter prison sentence in exchange for testifying, but she was not forgiven by the court. And she was not forgiven by me. People sometimes believe forgiveness is the only healthy ending. I disagree. Hatred is a chain. I refuse to carry it. But forgiveness is a gift. I was not required to give it to someone who had never asked with an honest heart. Before Claire was sentenced, she requested a private meeting. We sat across from each other in a small courthouse room. She wore a plain gray uniform. Without makeup and expensive clothes, she looked younger. For a moment, I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle. I remembered holding her hand on her first day of school. I remembered promising our mother that I would always take care of her. Claire looked down at the table. "Did you ever love him?" I asked. She nodded. "I thought I did. More than you loved me." Her face tightened. "It wasn't about love. I know." She finally looked at me. "You had everything." "No. I worked for what I had. Grandma gave you the house. She gave me a responsibility." Claire shook her head. "You always make it sound noble." I leaned forward. I woke beneath a burning vehicle and pulled myself through broken glass. "While I was learning how to walk without falling, you were trying on my ring. Do not tell me my life was easy because you wanted what I earned." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for?" She opened her mouth and closed it. I waited at last. She whispered, "I'm sorry we got caught." The honesty surprised both of us. I stood. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For finally telling me the truth." I left without hugging her. My divorce from Daniel became final 6 months later. He tried to demand part of the estate as marital property. The judge denied the request in 7 minutes. The fraudulent deed was canceled. The insurance claim was rejected. The investors recovered most of their deposits through seized accounts and the sale of Daniel's remaining business assets. The estate returned to me, but it did not feel like home. Every room held a betrayal. Claire's perfume remained in the upstairs closet. Daniel's renovation plans covered the library table. My grandmother's furniture had been sold or placed in storage. Even the ocean sounded different. For weeks, I considered selling the property. Then I found a box in the attic. Inside were my grandfather's letters from Vietnam, photographs of my grandmother as a young nurse, and the original plans for Harbor House. On top was an envelope with my name. My grandmother had written it shortly before she died. Evelyn. A house is only walls until someone gives it a purpose. People may admire what is beautiful, but beauty alone does not heal anyone. Fill this place with second chances. That is how you will know it is truly yours. I sat on the attic floor and cried. Not the angry tears I had shed in the hospital. These tears felt like rain after a fire. I understood. Then that taking the house back was not the end of my revenge. The real victory would be using it for the purpose my family had tried to destroy. I retired from active service the following year and entered the Navy Reserve. With the trust fund, recovered assets, donations, and help from veterans organizations, I completed the renovation. We removed the black resort sign. We restored my grandmother's brass nameplate. We turned the eastern wing into accessible bedrooms. The library became a counseling room. The old guest house became temporary housing for families. A physical therapy center opened where Daniel had planned a private cocktail lounge. Above the main gate, we placed a new sign. Aus a play sausa. Our first resident was a 26-year-old medic named Sofia Ramirez. She had survived an explosion but lost part of her right leg. She arrived angry at the world and ashamed to need help. I understood both feelings. One evening, I found her sitting beside the ocean. "Do you ever stop thinking about what happened?" she asked. I sat beside her. "No," I said. "But one day, what happened becomes part of your story, instead of the person writing it." She was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you built this place?" I looked back at the glowing windows of the house. "It's why I kept it. 3 years have passed since the day I walked into my own engagement party. People still call what happened revenge. Maybe part of it was. I wanted Daniel to feel the fear he had created for me. I wanted Claire to watch the fantasy she stole turn into evidence. I wanted Harold's clever documents to become the pages that convicted him. They received all of that. But revenge alone would have left me standing in an empty house, listening to the ocean and remembering what they had done. Justice gave me something better. Last spring, Harbor House welcomed its 100th resident. We held a dinner in the courtyard. Veterans sat with their spouses, children, nurses, counselors, and volunteers. Music played beside the pool where Daniel had once celebrated my death. At sunset, Sophia walked toward me without her cane. She had become one of our peer counselors. "Commander," she said, "you should make a speech." I looked around at the faces in front of me. I thought of the convoy. I thought of my grandmother. I thought of the 9 days when the world believed I was dead, and the months when the people closest to me wished it were true. Then I raised my glass. "They tried to turn this house into proof that they had erased me," I said. "Instead, every person who heals here is proof that I returned." The courtyard became silent. Beyond the gate, my grandmother's name shone beneath the lights. I had once believed revenge meant taking back everything they stole. I was wrong. The sweetest revenge was building something they could never touch. And that is how the woman they buried came home and made her grave into a doorway. End.